Jared Diamond's documentary, Guns, Germs, and Steel, his theory is that a civilization's superiority is determined by their geographical location. A civilization that was able to farm easily and effectively was able to create a surplus of food, which in turn allowed that civilization to specialize in other areas such as steelwork, writing, and education. That is why the Europeans were able to become such a world power. Keeping in mind Diamond's theory, let's apply that to urban life. First, we should look at urban zoning policy. This is quoted from Robert Liberty's paper titled Abolishing Exclusionary Zoning, a National Policy Alliance for Environmentalists and Affordable Housing Advocates. Exclusionary zoning is unfair to people and families of modest means, many of whom are members of racial or ethnic minorities, because it sharply limits where they can live and thus their access to jobs, education, and quality of good life. This is also referred to in Susan Bickfords' paper, Constructing Inequality, City Spaces in the Architecture of Citizenship. Red lines in the city map are seen as gates, which are constructed relations of segregation. Already we are seeing examples of how geographic location can alienate certain groups of people. Bickford also describes how city spaces are constructed in certain ways that help some but at the same time inhibit others. Malls are patrolled by an increasing amount of security guards that hassle young African American and Latino teenagers who are stereotyped as troublemakers and non-consumers and make them feel uncomfortable. Bickford also points out spaces that are designed to keep the homeless away. They include sprinkler systems, no protection from the sun, and no public restrooms or water fountains. Also, bag lady-proof enclosures around restaurant dumpsters as well as bum-proof benches, with the arm bar between the seats so they cannot lie down. The only people who feel safe or secure in these places are white middle-class suburbanites. Bickford states, to the extent that they are successful, these purging techniques operate to screen and partition in a fairly thorough way some citizens from others. Often then, the primary experience of others is through media stereotypes. She goes on to say that since who we happen to see regularly as we move through the world has an influence on who we think of as citizens and who we think to engage with as citizens. In other words, whose perspectives must be taken into account when making political decisions. So let's take a step back. We are living in a so-called democratic society where everyone that is a citizen has rights and duties to be loyal to government. But certain groups are not treated as citizens, as stated earlier, so why should they feel or have any loyalty to a government that does not look out for them in the same way it does for the citizens that are not trapped by the constructs of their environment? That thought brings us to the concept of snitching. Snitching is the act of informing of another for the sake of profit, notoriety, possibly to lessen a prison sentence, but never for the public good. Law enforcement consistently relies on criminal informants, aka snitches, to make arrests and build cases. Law enforcement agencies are extorting these people. That is why the Stop Snitching campaign began, as well as the fact that no drug dealer or criminal wants to be snitched on for that matter. So these groups of people keep their mouths shut at times and do not cooperate with law enforcement. And why should they? They don't get anything in return and are always treated as second-class citizens. They're continually being used by the government. These groups, which are particularly racial or ethnic minorities, have loyalties to their community and families, not their government. So we have taken Diamond's broad thesis and have showed that is also true for urban life.